Hello, this is Dr. Tombley. I'm going to be reviewing today the Personal Recovery Program worksheet and how you can use it as a provider to help someone in recovery actually design their own personal recovery plan. Now, let me just start by clarifying what I'm talking about. In the Gorski model, every individual comes up with what their recovery plan is. This is similar to what they experience also in 12-step programs. Basically, you might have heard them talk about, I'm working my program, or they'll say to someone else, make sure you're working your program. What they mean by that is, what is their plan to live out recovery? Remember, recovery is living a fulfilling and healthy life without negative behaviors. So a personal recovery program is their program to live life to the fullest. All right. So I want to distinguish this from, say, a relapse prevention plan or a relapse intervention plan. These things are, what do you do when you're in the midst of relapse or you have relapse, regardless of how you define relapse? That's about being remediating, going backwards and fixing something. The personal recovery plan is a forward look. Here's what I'm doing to live that healthy and fulfilling life without negative behaviors. And so it's designed to say, here are some habits that I'm going to be doing, activities I'm going to do on a regular basis, daily and weekly, that are going to be part of my new life. Remember, rule number one is change your lifestyle. So the personal recovery plan is about changing that lifestyle. What does it look like when you make those changes? So this worksheet should help you kind of work through it. Now, remember, there are 7 zones of recovery, meaning there are 7 areas that they're going to create habits for. And we've looked at those in the past, but let me just go ahead and quickly review them for you. All right. First of all, there's the area of growth, education, and retraining. Then self-protective behaviors. What are they going to do to assure that they are not putting themselves at risk? Nutrition, then exercise. And on the worksheet, I've combined nutrition and exercise together, mostly because they're very related, but ideally just to fit them on the page. Relaxation, spirituality, and a balanced life. So there are 7 areas that you're going to develop their plan for. So let's let me give you an illustration real quick. So say, for example, someone says, I go to an NA meeting every day. I do a personal inventory every night. I go to church every week. I practice gratitude every day. You see, these are all habits that they're doing. I play with my kids for 3 hours every Sunday afternoon. I balance 8, 8, and 8. I work 8 hours, play 8 hours, and sleep 8 hours. I'm down to only 1 soda a day. Those are all kinds of things that they're doing in their life to have this healthy and fulfilling life without negative behaviors. Those are just all kinds of illustrations. In this worksheet, you're going to go one by one, and you're going to pick some and talk about what they might really look like, so that you can help draft what that particular program might look like. So on the top of this sheet are some just phrases that are important. We work out our program every day. So a personal program is a daily program. This is my program and it's my responsibility. I take it gladly. So it's not someone else's responsibility for them to fulfill this, it is theirs. Now, what's good about the Gorski model and this concept of a recovery program is that these habits and these tasks should translate fairly easily to our FCC app, and they will be able to track their progress. They'll be able to see how well they're doing these things. This little feedback loop should be a real plus in helping them kind of develop these habits. So here's some general rules. Number 1, there should be at least 1 task recorded for every section. So what we're saying here is you can't leave out a section. You can't do something in growth and something in self-protection but not do anything in nutrition or exercise and say, well, I'll take care of that later. Nope. Your program involves something in all 7 zones. You want them to be thinking about all 7 zones. You want them to understand that that's really what a program looks like. Um, and they need to be kind of looking at how to make sure there's something in every zone. Now, what that does mean is that what you choose needs to be manageable. So, in early stages of recovery, if they're in stabilization or early recovery, if you're giving them these highly complex and time consuming habits that are so foreign to anything they've ever done before, that could be overwhelming because there's 7 zones. You're not going to want to give them 7 different activities that take 45 minutes apiece. As the provider, you're the professional, you're the experienced person that should be there saying, look, this is what's realistic, and let's start very simple. And let's make it, and just getting into the rhythm of doing something like that. I think that's the key. I mean, I'll tell you, for example, I've decided that I wanted to do some strength training, and so I picked 4 types of upper body movements, and I did those upper body movements. I did 10 repetitions with no weights, nothing. They were really just stretches. And they began like stretches. And I did that for 4 weeks. I just got into the pattern of every morning I would get up and I would do these 4 upper body movements. I did it with no weights, and they were in 4 weeks. I got in the habit of doing that. Then I started adding some 2.5 pounds, and then I added 5 pounds. And so basically, there's just this continual kind of growth that's achievable and realistic. When you're looking at someone who's gone from disorganization to organization, you need to take it in slow baby steps, steps that are manageable. So, but we want to do it without eliminating one of the 7 zones. So that leads us to number 2. Be creative, but make sure they're manageable, make sure they're realistic, and make sure that you use actions that can become habits. When we work through this in a group setting, people would say things like, well, they need to not call their buddy. So remember this, that when you put you put a list of something for them not to do, that's not a habit. That's not an action. Now, they may very well need to avoid seeing certain people, but that's very difficult. You have to write it or express it or find some way to practice it in a positive action. So it may not be who you don't call. It may be, I only call people that who you do call. What's the criteria for the people that you do call? And do they meet that criteria? So you're going to have to make sure that you're thinking in terms of how you can take their ideas. You know, they might say, you know what, I got to stay away from the river. And then translate that into a positive behavior, some action that becomes a habit. So we'll talk more about that in the self-protective section. All right, number 3, estimate how much time each task will take. And what I mean by that is, if they were to do it, is that a 5-minute task? Is that a 10-minute task? Is that a 15-minute task? This way you can when you finalize the plan, you can say, there's no, it's reasonable. You're only adding 30 minutes total to your day. Are you willing to give 30 minutes of your day specifically to your recovery? Yes. What will you need to do to give that 30 minutes a day? So you're not estimating how often you will do it in the time section there. What you're estimating is the actual time it takes to complete that particular task. All right. And then you'll notice in the graph just below, there's a column for app. That just means, do you decide that this particular task goes into the app, and have you added it in as an activity for them? All right. So that's to be used once you finish the worksheet and you kind of go back and say, well, let's see what we've got here, and let's figure out which ones we're going to keep. Because what you'll discover is you'll fill out these top zones quickly, and then you'll get down to these other zones, and then it'll start to be overwhelming. And you say, you know what? Right now, we're writing down ideas, and then we're going to go back and pick which ones we're going to do or how we're going to modify them. So be thinking about how much time that person's going to be investing. Number 4 is you can utilize one habit to meet the objective for no more than 2 zones. So this is helpful when you're trying to minimize things. It's one activity can be used for more than one zone, because depending on what the purpose of the activity is, then it really may fit multiple objectives. Here's a good illustration. I'm going to go to an NA group every day, all right, for the next 90 days. Every day you're going to go to an NA meeting. Well, that may satisfy your growth zone. It may satisfy your self-protective zone. It may satisfy your spirituality zone. It may satisfy your balanced living zone. So you can use some activities for more than one zone, as long as the person and you as the clinician know why are you using it. All right. That helps you fine tune the activity so toward its purpose. And it helps the client be aware of, why am I doing this? What is the reason why? If they know the reason why, they're much more apt to actually successfully gain something from it. All right, so we'll move on. Number 5, mark which tasks will be tracked on the app and indicate that they have been added. So let's go zone by zone. First, the zone of education retraining, or we're calling it growth. We commit to continually growing in our recovery. So you will have daily tasks and weekly tasks. You write down an idea of what might go in there for growth and how much time it might take. This could be a group. This could be going to treatment. This could be taking a class on untangling relationships, on parenting. There's a variety of things that could be involved in this. And they may be committing to an hour class. They may be committing to an hour a week class. They may be committing to, you know what, I'm going to read a self-help book, and I'm going to read for 30 minutes a day. I'm going to read through the big book for the AA book. And whatever their personal plan is, so that they are starting to invest in themselves. This is definitely where you could put, I'm going to attend individual counseling sessions. I'm going to go to group therapy. I'm going to go to day treatment. This is where that would go. Whatever is that extended growth that they're needing to use and what they're going to commit to do. Now, right off the bat, you probably realize that this has to be modified as we go along. If they say 90 meetings in 90 days, or I'm going to do a untangling relation groups for 8 weeks, obviously they're going to have to come back at that time period, 90 days or 8 weeks, and modify their program. And so the program is something that is constantly shifting and changing. In stabilization phase, it's exploration. In the early recovery phase, there's a lot of modifications to it. You're constantly modifying it. Sometimes every month you're looking at it in that early recovery stage. It really isn't until middle recovery that it has stabilized, and it kind of stays pretty much the same. But in the first 2 phases of recovery, stabilization and early recovery, it changes regularly because there's so many new things coming into the world. So you write down what they're going to do daily and what they're going to do weekly, how often I'm going to go to treatment 3 times a week, and how much time they're committing to doing that. Next is self-protective behaviors. Now, this one's a little bit different because there's a lot of knots that seem to come up. What am I going to avoid? And it's legitimate to avoid. So the statement is, we commit to protect ourselves and our loved ones by changing people, places, and things. So what does your protection plan include? And so you have this open box right at the beginning for you just to write down all the knots. Because I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to go hang around these people, I'm not going to go to these places. I'm not going to do these things. And that's fine if you want to write them as knots and make it simple. But realize that those knots are going to have to be turned into something positive. So you write them all down. What do they need to do to protect themselves? What do they need to avoid? But what do they need to add? And so once you get those, what they need to avoid, you need to really move them saying, well, what do we need to add into your world? What's the activity that you're going to do that's going to be self-protective? You want them to not only be on, when they think about self-protection, that's not just a defensive posture that they're taking. Let me protect myself from those bad things. It's an offensive posture too. What am I going to do? Because as I do these good things, I become more resilient. I become healthier. I have a more fulfilling life. And when I have a healthy, fulfilling life, then substances have less and less of a role. I don't need them the way that I needed them, or I don't use them the way that I used them before. So once you kind of jot some things for self-protection down, then you can say, well, what are those activities that you're going to do? And how would we possibly track them? In our group exercise, writing self-protective behaviors was actually the most difficult because they always started with knots and had to go and try to develop a positive statement. So struggle with that, get some help, talk to your colleagues, and get them to kind of help you reframe some of those things. Some people are just kind of naturally good at this. So do not, and some people are not. So don't be afraid to ask, hey, here's a not behavior, and I need to turn it into a positive action behavior. All right, the next zones on the second page are nutrition and exercise. Combine them together, and there should be something daily and something weekly. All right, so it's not just a daily, there's both. You have to have at least one in each of these areas because these can be simple. I'm going to drink 6 glasses of water a day. I'm going to walk um, uh, 10 blocks or a mile 3 times a day. I mean, 3 times a week. Whatever they're doing, something that they're doing nutrition-wise, something that they're doing exercise-wise. It's not either or. It's something nutrition, something exercise. We commit to healing and caring for our body by eating well and getting consistent exercise. I cannot emphasize enough that drug addiction is a physiological and psychological issue. Their body and how they manage their body, care for their body, and equip their body is as important as how they equip their mind to walk in recovery. And that sometimes they don't get it. They think they just have to have more willpower, and that is just all about, what's in their head. And that is not true. That is a deception, and it leads people to reuse. They must work on their body, and their nutrition and their exercise are pivotal. For example, the number one way to restore baseline dopamine levels is regular aerobic exercise, 20 minutes a day. So that's going to be to their greatest advantage in breaking the way their brain has been hijacked and hacked with the impulse system of addiction. So exercise might end up being the most powerful thing they do to overcome their compulsivity and their addiction. So emphasize this, make this serious, make this meaningful. The other thing about nutrition and exercise, these are usually really easy things to track. So there's a good sense of success that they can feel from having a positive feedback. I did it. I did it. I did it. Again, last thing is make sure those are reasonable. Baby steps, small things that get added on to over time. All right, relaxation. We commit to wholesome rest and recreation. We balance work, rest, and play. Again, you're looking at something they're going to do daily and something they're going to do weekly. At least one in each category of daily and weekly. And again, relaxation could just simply be I'm going to listen to music for 15 minutes in the evening or before I go to bed. Or this might be where you do some mindfulness. This could be when they say I'm going to go fishing once a week, or I'm going to go on an outdoor activity with my significant other once a week. Whatever goes in there, there's a plethora of things that you could put. but it is about relaxation. Let me say something about mindfulness for a minute, because this emerged in our group work as well. Um, Mindfulness is about becoming aware of the present moment. And so sometimes we think anytime we play music, or try to, you know, get into that relaxed Zen state in our head, that must be mindfulness. That is not mindfulness. Relaxation actually allows you to move from awareness of past, present, and future. You're able to move back and forth fluidly without anxiety. That's what relaxation does. It should really be moving you. So when you're sitting there on the porch at the end of the day, having a glass of iced tea and looking out and watching the deer come out in the evening, you're also thinking about what your day was like and what you're reviewing it, what was easy, what was hard, what did you achieve. You're kind of thinking about tomorrow, the things you want to do. It's this quieter, less driven time for your mind to move uh, to the past, present, and future. Mindfulness are specifically designed and intentionally applied techniques, as simple as they may be, that bring you into the present moment. And being in the now moment, aware of yourself and your thoughts and the reality of the um, current situation. It's all about the now, and it's about training yourself to be in that now moment. So that's not relaxation. It can be relaxing, all right? And so maybe people have to do a mindfulness exercise to introduce them to a stiller moment so they can go to relaxation, for example. Let's say I'm going to sit down and do a grounding technique before my 20 minutes of relaxation. The grounding technique brings me in and centers me to a place. And then I move in to 20 minutes of relaxation sitting on the porch. Maybe someone even does something like command muscle relaxation. That's about the now moment. So it can precede a period of relaxation, but it is not the relaxation itself. They're two separate things. Mindfulness goes well in self-protective behaviors. It goes well in growth, maybe that they're really learning to become self-aware. It goes great in a balanced life. It has a role sometimes in spirituality. And the only role it really plays in relaxation is a threshold to whatever the relaxation activity actually is. I hope that's a little clearer as I made that distinction. All right, spirituality. We commit to finding meaning in something greater than ourselves. This is important for you to understand. Some people will have a negative taste with the word spirituality. They'll have a negative taste about religion. They'll think you're telling me I have to have God as my higher power. And that is not what we're saying at this point. Spirituality is the scope of a human being, the part of us that finds meaning and value that transcend the material world, and sometimes even transcends kind of our what we can know empirically, what we can know rationally. So I can hold these set of glasses and I can tell you that they are gray and dark, and they have certain types of hinges on them and certain types of lenses, and that's kind of an empirical awareness of them. I can even tell you that they allow me to see clearer up close so that I can read effectively. That's kind of an empirical thing. But you know, they not only let me read, they help ideas come into my mind. So now I'm suddenly moving outside of the empirical and moving into kind of the metaphysical. They open my eyes to new ideas because I can read the page, and those ideas come into my mind, and I deal with those ideas, and I consider those ideas. And suddenly we're talking now about ideas and concepts and values and desires and hopes and dreams and possibilities and acceptance and limitations happening at a much higher level than what I can touch and feel. And so life is experienced with this zone and in every human being where we encounter and have to live with things we cannot touch and feel. Spirituality is about accepting that and developing that part. Now, for centuries, human beings have have expressed this through religious systems. They've gotten good at it, and so they've developed religious systems that allow them to do that. And through those religious systems, they've developed and enhanced their spirituality, and it's brought them resilience and peace of mind and a sense of direction and joy and happiness and contact with God. So understand that the spiritual life goes way beyond um, just a formal religion. Now, it could be that they embrace a formal religion. It could be they embrace a informal type of religion. Could be that they just are embracing a concept. Spirituality can be as simple as, you know what? I'm going to trust the relapse prevention program. I'm going to trust treatment right now. It's bigger than me. I don't get it, but I'm going to trust it. And I'm going to start finding meaning for my life now in everything they tell me in treatment. They can change that later, and then suddenly their higher power, for if we use a 12-step term, becomes something bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger as it goes. But what's key here is you're always finding meaning in something greater than themselves. If they're trying to find meaning in something that they can totally control, then they're missing the point here, because that's not greater than themselves. That's grasping at control. I will only yield to people that I can control. I will only yield to ideas and concepts that I can manipulate and control. That's not what this zone is for. It's about yielding, surrendering, humbling yourself, whatever term, to things that are greater than you. And in that process, having an existential moment where you then find a greater meaning that fills in your life. Right? So, what will they do for this? Again, examples. It could be prayer, could be meditation, it could be a devotional reading, it could be attending some kind of group. It could be going on a spiritual walk. All right. But let me caution you here with spirituality. Please, when you write down something that they're going to do, make it specific. And both of you should be able to say why this works, why this is part of the zone. What are you getting out of it? If someone's going to take a nature walk for their spirituality, for example, what's the difference between a nature walk for relaxation, a nature walk for education, and a nature walk for spirituality? All right. What makes the difference is where they focus their intention. What are they seeking from that nature walk? If I'm seeking education, I'm trying to learn the names of plants and being able to identify uh, herbs or weeds for medicinal purposes, or how to forage for food, or I'm learning trees, or I'm watching the ecosystem education. If I'm walking for relaxation, I'm just enjoying the fresh air and awareness of being in a green space and the movement that's happening. I'm watching, and I'm just being part of the rhythm of the woods, so to speak. For spirituality, it's much more complex. If you're doing a nature walk for spirituality, you have to say, I'm giving myself over to forces that are bigger than me, that I cannot control. And as I become aware of them, then I synchronize myself to them and I yield to them. I'm looking for the forces of nature, um, the systems and the order that the universe is in, and I'm going to yield to that order. So it's much more complex. Now, though, the nature walks, you notice how I could have fulfilled 3 zones with that one exercise as long as they do part of the walk for this and part of the walk for that. Um, I think that's fantastic. That's how you can double up some of these zones. You would not do 3 because we're going to do no more than one activity for 2 zones. But I wouldn't do the spiritual, even if the person kind of was pagan and really kind of believed in kind of the forces of nature and energy. That's a complex thing to do. So if they haven't already fully developed that system in them, I would say let's not do that for your spirituality. Let's find something else that's going to be more. Why don't you? You could be reading a book on Buddhist meditation and practicing some Buddhist meditation. That would be a better avenue than the nature walk. The nature walk sounds simple, but in order to make it a reflection of spirituality, it's very, very complex. This is where your role comes in as a professional. You're a substance abuse counselor. You should understand these zones like the back of your hand. You should understand how to fashion an experience and how to focus on the experience, how to measure whether or not the experience is working. This is your craft. This is your skill. This is what you are learning to do. This is what you do. This is how you help. They're going to go do it, but you're going to give them the tool. You're going to show them how the tool works. I challenged the group that I worked with yesterday that they would actually do this in their own life so that they were walking from experience. They were talking from experience. They were training or teaching from experience, not simply from some academic point of view. I can't tell you enough. You're the professional. Be professional. And that doesn't mean follow your code of ethics, although I guess it does mean that. But when I say it right now, I'm not pointing to your code of ethics. I'm talking about you being extremely proficient, one of the highest proficiency in practicing your craft of substance abuse counseling. All right, last thing, the balanced life. This one is a very open category. We commit to living in a moderation. Let me just put my glasses on and read it so that I don't misread the words. We commit to living in moderation of good things and avoiding negative behaviors totally. What are they doing that is going to make the good things moderate and the negative behaviors absent? Remember, some people can take a good thing and overdo it. That's not what we're trying to do here. So how are they going to balance that out? Whatever brings a sense of balance to them. Again, this could be a mindfulness thing that does it. This could be daily reflections that do this for balanced life. This could be a schedule. Maybe they come up with goals. I will write out daily goals or weekly goals. I'm going to repair my finances by keeping receipts and by having a weekly budget meeting with my spouse. Whatever the most significant area of need that brings a sense of balance, that's what you pick for that area. All right, summing all that up, you have an enormous amount of flexibility. You can double up some of these. In fact, I suggest that you do. You make sure that you point to the reason why for each of the activities and how they meet the requirement of that zone. You keep it simple and manageable. You put it into action steps and activities. Once you've filled all this out, you go back to the beginning, review them, decide which ones you're going to keep, make your modifications, and then check the ones that are going to be entered into the app. Enter those app activities in your app and how they're going to track them and get them to start working their program and monitoring their progress. They're checking every day. They're recording every day how they're doing their things. The app is driving their program. And that'll be the next lesson we do about how those activities get moved into the app and how you as a clinician support them and encourage them every day as they're checking in and using their app.